Chapter 1 of In the Field, 1914-1915. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by FNH. In the Field, 1914-1915, by Marcel Dupont. Chapter 1. To General Sheffields, a tribute of sincere gratitude. Preface. In the following pages the reader will find no tactical studies, no military criticism, no vivid picture of a great battle. I have merely tried to make a written record of some of the hours I have lived through during the course of the war. A modest lieutenant of chasseurs, I cannot claim to form any opinion as to the operations which have been carried out for the last 9 months on an immense front. I only speak of the things I have seen with my own eyes, in the little corner of the battlefield occupied by my regiment. It occurred to me that if I should come out of this deathly struggle safe and sound, it would be a pleasure to me some day to read over these notes of battle or bivouac. I thought, further, that my people would be interested in them, so I tried to set down my impressions in my intervals of leisure. Days of misery, days of joy, days of battle. What volumes one might write, if one were to follow our squadrons day by day in their march! I preferred to choose among many memories. I did not wish to compose memoirs, but only to evoke the most tragic or the most touching moments of my campaign. And, indeed, I have had only too many from which to choose. I shall rejoice if I have been able to revive some phases of the tragedy in which we were the actors for my brothers in arms. Further, I gladly offer these impressions to any non-combatants they may interest. They must not look for the talents of a great story-teller, nor the thrilling interest of a novel. All they will find is the simple tale of an eye-witness, the unschooled effort of a soldier more apt with the sword than with the pen. M.D. Chapter 1. How I went to the front. The train was creeping along slowly in the soft night air. Seated on a truss of hay in the horse-box with my own 2 horses and that of my orderly, Wattrelot, I looked out through the gap left by the unclosed sliding door. How slowly we were going! How often we stopped! I got impatient as I thought the hours we were losing whilst the other fellows were fighting and reaping all of the glory. Station after station we passed, bridges, level crossings, tunnels. Everywhere I saw soldiers guarding the line and with bayonets of the old chassepots glinting in the starlight. Now and again the train would suddenly pull up for some mysterious reason. The 3 horses, frightened at being brought into collision with each other, made the van echo with the thunder of their hoofs, and they slipped, stamped, and recovered their balance. I got up to calm them with soothing words and caresses. By the light of the wretched lantern swinging and creaking above the door, I could see their 3 heads, with pricked ears and uneasy eyes. They were breathing hard, and could not understand why they had been brought away from their comfortable stable with its thick litter of clean straw. They were not thinking about the war, but they seemed to understand that their good times were over, that they would have to resign themselves to all sorts of discomforts, march unceasingly, pass nights in camps under the pouring rain, keep their heavy equipment on their backs for days together, and not always get food when they were hungry. Then the train would set off again with the noise of tightened couplings and creaking waggons. Whilst I was mechanically looking out at the darkness, dotted here and there with the coloured lights of the signals placed along the line, my straying thoughts would wander to the fields of battle and try to picture the scene on my arrival at the front. It was the 28th of August, nearly a month after the order had been given for mobilisation, and the armies had been fighting for some days already. What had happened? We could only glean part of the truth from the short official announcements. We knew there had been a hard fight at Charleroi and at Dinant, and in the direction of Nancy, but the result had not been defined. I thought I could guess, however, that these battles had not been decisive, but that they had cost both sides dearly. I was tempted to rejoice, fool that I was, to think that the first great victories would not be won before I joined my regiment. I had not yet been able to console myself for the ill fortune that prevented me from starting with the squadrons of the first line. And yet I had to submit to regulations. The Colonel was inflexible, and answered my entreaties by quoting the inexorable rule: in every cavalry regiment the 6th lieutenant in order of seniority must stay at the depôt to help the major and the captains of the 5th squadron. They must assemble, equip and train the reserve squadrons of the regiment. I shall never forget what those days were to me. Days of overwhelming work, when in a tropical heat I was busy from sunrise to sunset, entering the names of thousands of men, registering the horses, giving certificates and providing food for the lot. It needed some skill to find billets for them all. The horses were lodged in stables, riding establishments and yards, the men in every corner and nook of this vast district. It was tiresome work, and would have been almost impossible but for the general goodwill and admirable discipline. But all the time I was thinking of the fellows away in Belgium, boldly reconnoitring the masses of Germans and coming into contact with the enemy. At last, at 11 o'clock on the 28th of August, the Colonel's telegram came ordering me to go at once and replace my young friend, 2nd Lieutenant de C., seriously wounded whilst reconnoitring. At 6 o'clock in the evening I had packed my food, strapped on my kit, and got my horses into the train. I set off with a light heart, and my fellow officers of the reserve and of the Territorials, who were all still at the depôt, came to see me off. But how slowly the train travelled, and what a long way off our little garrison town in the west seemed to me when I thought of the firing line out towards the north. I made up my mind to try and imitate my faithful Wattrelot, who had been snoring in peace for ever so long. I stretched myself on the golden straw and waited impatiently for the dawn, dozing and dreaming. At about 8 o'clock in the morning the train stopped at the concentration station of N. What a crowd, and yet what order and precision in this formidable traffic! All the commissariat trains for the army muster here before being sent off to different parts of the front. The numerous sidings were all covered with long rows of trucks. In every direction engines getting up steam were panting and puffing. In the middle of this hurly-burly men were on the move, some of them calm, jaded and patient. These were the railway men, who went about in a businesslike way, pushing railway vans, counting packages, carrying papers, checking lists, and giving information politely and willingly. The rest were soldiers, lost, bewildered, in the midst of this entanglement of lines which seemed inextricable. They were asking each other questions, swearing, laughing, protesting, and then they got into a train and were promptly hauled out and sent to another. But with all this there was no disorder, no lack of discipline. Everywhere the same admirable composure reigned that I had already noticed at the station of my little garrison town. With Wattrelot's help I tidied myself up for a visit to the military authorities of the station. After many difficulties, and after passing through the hands of a number of sentries and orderlies on duty, I came into the presence of a kindly captain, to whom I stated my case. "These are my marching orders. Captain, how am I to join the light cavalry? Do you know where it is just now?" The captain raised his hands to heaven, and with a look of despair: "How am I to know where any regiment is now? You can't expect it. All I can do for you is to couple your truck on with the commissariat train of your army corps. It will take you as far as the terminus, and there you must see what you can do." I went back to my horses. After various excursions hither and thither, which took up the whole morning, I at last managed to get my horse box coupled to the train. Wattrelot and I, together with the Territorial section that served as guard, were the only passengers. The whole train was composed of vans stuffed with food supplies and mysterious cases, packed into some separate vans carefully sealed. Our departure was fixed for 2 o'clock, and meanwhile I had a chat with the Territorial lieutenant who commanded our escort. I tried to find out from him what had happened at the front. He did not know any more than I did, and merely told me how sorry he was for his own ill luck. "You know, our job is no joke. We start after luncheon, travel all the rest of the day and part of the night, sleep where we can, and the next day We go back again in the empty train.